All right, everyone. So we'll go ahead and get started. So independent revolutionary socialist Kshama Swathe is now on the ballot. My name is Justin Baer. I'm the campaign manager for our Kshama for Congress campaign. I'm also a member of Workers Strike Back, the nationwide organization that Kshama co-founded. Welcome everybody who is here in person and on the live stream for our May town hall. The fact that Kshama is now officially on the ballot is a major step forward for our campaign. This is the strongest anti-war, pro-worker campaign nationally, and that's not just idle boasting. We know this to be true because of Kshama's track record. We know what she stands for and how incorruptible she is because she proved it for 10 years in office on the Seattle City Council, defeating the rich and the Democratic Party, leading movements to win major victories for working people over and over again. That is why we're fighting to elect her to Congress, because we need leaders at the national level who won't sell out and who will fight for the working class. We launched this campaign 11 months ago, and since then we have won the active support of tens of thousands of working people who have signed our petitions, donated, and got involved in building this campaign so far. This campaign is about to heat up big time now that all the candidates have declared in the race for Washington's 9th congressional district. The Democratic and Republican parties are united in wanting Kshama absolutely nowhere near Congress. And they will fight, and they will fight tooth and nail to stop her from being elected. Throughout this meeting, I want all of you to think about what it would mean to have a leader like Kshama with a national platform to lead movements to fight for ending all military aid to Israel, to fight for no weapons and tech for genocide and imperialist war, and to fight for free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich. Think about that and think about how you can deepen your commitment to this campaign. Those demands I listed are some of the central demands of Kshama's campaign, and they are the main topic of this town hall. Through a genocide and decades of wars that have been fully backed with trillions of dollars by the Democratic and Republican parties. At the same time, working people are facing a healthcare crisis. We need to fight back to stop the wars and get working people the care that they need. So let's get started with some chants. When I say fund healthcare, you say not war. Fund healthcare.
Not war.
Fund healthcare.
Not war.
Fund healthcare.
Not war.
So to start our discussion today, our main speaker is a socialist who's gone to war for working people for over a decade in Seattle and nationally. She used her Seattle City Council office to launch and lead movements to win the nation's highest minimum wage, the Amazon tax, and many historic renters' rights. As a city council member, she only took home the average worker's wage, donating the rest after taxes to labor union strike funds and other movements of working people. Now she's running for Congress, and if elected, she would be the first ever independent revolutionary socialist in Congress. Please welcome Kshama Swathe.
Good afternoon to everyone here and also everyone who's watching over the live stream. Our campaign, as Justin said, is calling for free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich, ending all military aid to the Israeli state, and ending all weapons and tech for genocide and imperialist war. We're also fighting to shut down ICE and the detention centers and to stop the deportations, and we're fighting for rent control and a $25 an hour minimum wage nationally. The majority of the American working class agrees at the billionaire and multimillionaire executives and shareholders of health insurance corporations and big pharma who are getting rich from denying coverage to people who desperately need it. Anger at Trump and the Republicans for slashing over $1 trillion from Medicaid and Medicare and other social assistance is also sky high. There is anger at the ending of the enhanced tax subsidies of Obamacare or the so-called Affordable Care Act or ACA. Over 25 million Americans in this, the richest country in the history of humanity, are simply not even enrolling in health insurance programs. And for the ones who are forced to, premiums are skyrocketing, out-of-pocket costs are climbing, and families are being forced to make impossible choices just to see a doctor or fill a prescription. Poll after opinion poll is showing that healthcare is the top concern of the American working class. So is the anger at the genocide and the wars in the Middle East. And this is not just for Democratic Party voters. A majority of the Republican Party voters are opposed to the wars in the Middle East. There was mass opposition to the war on Iran even before Trump launched the war. This is unprecedented. There's a very important poll from March this year. The poll is from Fox News. It's a very important poll. It shows that 81% of Americans are concerned about health care, and almost 60% of voters oppose the war in Iran. In other words, what is the story being told by these polls? It says that American working people want health care, not warfare. And yet the wars go on, and we are no closer to winning universal health care than we were a few years ago. That is our clue to understand that we need a fighting strategy. And a fighting strategy means, first and foremost, understanding the cold, hard truth that it will require powerful mass movements to win any of this, whether it is winning healthcare or ending the wars. Let's take a look at our enemies. Who are our enemies? Health insurance companies, pharmaceutical and medical device companies, for-profit hospitals, weapons manufacturers, AI companies like Palantir. These corporations are not inanimate objects. They are owned by billionaires and multimillionaires who are making the decision to allow war and bloodshed to happen and to deny health care. And most of the wealth in these multinational corporations is owned by the same group of richest people of all nations. It's not just American billionaires, but billionaires as a whole. In other words, when we get denied health care by an insurance company, when Palestinians and Lebanese face bombing and shooting, it is not only the executives of those specific corporations who profit from the death of working people. All billionaires and multimillionaires profit from all the death and slaughter in the Middle East and from the suffering of American working people who have to choose between paying rent or seeing the doctor. The wealthiest 10% of Americans held 93% of all stocks, the highest level ever recorded. Meanwhile, the bottom 50% of Americans held just 1% of all stocks. The entire billionaire and multimillionaire class has a stake in continuing forever wars and keeping healthcare privatized with insurance companies gouging us. And these millionaires, billionaires and multimillionaires will fight us ruthlessly. And it's not only about their direct profits, which it absolutely is about, because these guys are loath to part from even a single penny of their wealth. But it is not only about just that. The capitalist class is so hostile to working people winning any victory because any victory sends an emboldening message to us that we can fight and we can win. So they don't want to see any example. They want to nip this campaign in the bud. What we end up actually winning, and whether we win this election, it will all come down to the strength of our movement. It will come down to the balance of forces between us, the working class, and them, the capitalist class. And don't believe anyone who peddles the lies that there is no us versus them. There absolutely is. Capitalism is a zero-sum game. These health insurance profits and the war profiteering, all of that comes from denying health care. It comes from slaughtering people. It is a life and death zero-sum game for billions of us. That is why winning any of this will require militant working class movements, and that is why that fighting strategy that we need to build those militant movements means we need to be very sober about who is on our side and who is not. Obviously, the billionaires and multimillionaires are not on our side. If we think they're on our side, then we're in big trouble. Trump and the Republicans are not on our side. They make it very clear that they are not for the working class. But the Democratic Party is not on our side either.
That's right.
Trump's cuts to Medicare and Medicaid were not the first cuts. The first cuts to Medicaid and Medicare by a whopping $127 billion happened under Democratic President Bill Clinton with his so-called Balanced Budget Act. And that bill also opened the door. Not only did it slash the funds for Medicare, it opened the door to privatizing Medicare, the so-called Medicare Advantage, which is a completely Orwellian name because Medicare Advantage is a huge disadvantage for retirees and people with disabilities who desperately rely on the service. Our opponent, Adam Smith, voted for the Balanced Budget Act. Democrats had the White House and majorities in both houses of Congress under Bill Clinton, then under Barack Obama, and then under Joe Biden. They had many years to do all the beautiful things that they claim they want to do. But they refused to push for universal health care or even a strong public option. They did not even agree to make the Obamacare tax credits permanent, knowing full well that if they didn't make them permanent under Biden, that Trump 2.0 was going to take them off. They knew that, but they didn't actually make a move for that. And instead, under Clinton, Obama, and Biden, what did we get? We got 7 nations facing military assault under Obama. We got the genocide that was presided over by Biden, the Holocaust of the 21st century. So the Democrats and Republicans are both parties of the billionaires, and in fact, they are the most powerful parties of the global billionaire class. A harder and less visible thing to understand is the role of progressive Democrats, but we have to understand this because we will not be able to win unless we are clear about this. Progressive Democrats are not there to do progressive things and push the Democratic Party to the left and do more working class things because there's no evidence that even if they did intend it, if they did intend it, they have spectacularly failed. Let me put it that way because the evidence is there to see. The minimum wage nationally is $7.25. So there is absolutely no evidence that even if they had good intentions that it's even working. But that is not actually what they intend to. And even if any individual progressive Democrat comes into office in Congress with any intentions, those intentions are quickly beaten down in the face of careerism and the party establishment. Because the purpose of progressive Democrats, the so-called progressives, is not to try and win something for workers. Their purpose is to give cover to the capitalist agenda of the Democratic Party, and most importantly, to keep tens of millions of working people forever shackled to the two-party system. The role of Pramila Jayapal, AOC, and other progressive Democrats is to try and whitewash the crimes of the Democratic Party, which is a party of billionaires, a party of war and genocide, and a party of deportations. Let's look at their track record. Progressive Democrats have brought Medicare for All bills, which is a universal health care bill. They have brought those bills forward 13 times. 13. You'd have thought we would have won universal health care 13 times over. Pramila Jayapal herself has brought it 3 times, including, I believe, this last year. But they have never built any momentum around it. They announce it and they leave it at that, and they can say that, on paper, they can say that they support it. This time, Pramila Jayapal has done something even worse than usual. She allowed Adam Smith to formally join her Medicare for All bill as a quote-unquote co-sponsor. let's be clear. First of all, Jayapal herself had zero intention of fighting for it, because fighting for it means building mass rallies and actually threatening to bring it to a vote, demanding that it be brought to a vote on the congressional floor, rallying tens of thousands of people to Washington, D.C., saying, let's demand that the House Speaker, the President, all of these powerful politicians put Medicare for all for a vote. It's not genius. It doesn't take genius to figure out what is to be done. But it does take a backbone and some character to stand with the working class. So not only did Jayapal not have, or any other progressive Democrats, this is not just about her, it's just an example, not only do the progressive Democrats not have any intention of ever bringing Medicare for all bills for a vote, ever, note that word, but on top of that, she allowed Adam Smith to co-sponsor that bill because she is trying to do her part in trying to launder Adam Smith's pro-war, anti-worker reputation. Allowing Adam Smith to formally sponsor the bill is shameful because she knows, and we know, that Adam Smith is not about to suddenly turn into a working class supporter. The only reason he wanted to formally sponsor that bill is because he is very afraid of our campaign and is rushing to try and clean up his record. He would never have signed on to the bill had it had any chance of actually progressing. This role that progressives like Jayapal play, which is allowing warmongering, blood-drenched, Congress members like Adam Smith who have a warmongering, blood-drenched record, allowing them to whitewash their record, their pro-billionaire record, is a classic role of a gatekeeper. A fighting strategy means understanding that gatekeepers are not on the side of the working class. Why do we call them gatekeepers? Because on the surface, these progressive Democrats, they appear like they should be on our side. They say that they are on our side. They keep bringing these bills forward. They say they support progressive things. But in reality, their role is to put the brakes on any fight back by working people. Their peaceful careers, their six-figure salaries, all of that depends on them keeping good relations with the establishment, and they are themselves part of that establishment. Being clear about the role of gatekeepers is a make or break for movements. Winning anything for the working class requires defeating the gatekeepers. And when movement leaders are not clear about this, movements reach a dead end. This is why the Black Lives Matter movement ended up winning so little despite being the largest street protest movement in US history. And this is why a fighting strategy also means an independent movement, meaning independent of the parties of the billionaires. A movement that has a leadership that understands that we need to defeat the gatekeepers in order to defeat the billionaires. It is not an optional point. In the state of California, the Democratic Party was even more blatant in sabotaging the effort for single-payer, universal health care, not once, not twice, but 3 times, in 2017, in 2022, and just this past month in 2026. Each time, the nurses' union leadership introduced the bill jointly with the state Democrats, and each time, the Democratic Party had the governor's position and had a supermajority or near supermajority in both houses of the state legislature. And each time, it was Democrats who pulled the plug on universal health care. 3 times. Gavin Newsom, California's Democratic governor, who's now trying to become president, played an equally rotten role. In 2018, Newsom pledged on the campaign trail to create a single-payer system for California, saying, this is a quote from Newsom, "I am tired of politicians saying they support single-payer, but that it's too soon, too expensive, or someone else's problem." As soon as he was elected, he backed away from it. The lessons from our 10 years of revolutionary socialist city council office in Seattle are very crucial as a counterexample. We won unheard of victories, like the nation's highest minimum wage, which is now at $21.30 an hour. When we won it, we fought for $15 an hour, and at that time, we were mocked. Working people and my office was mocked by the corporate media, by the Chamber of Commerce, by the billionaires, that this would never happen. And we made it happen within 6 months of me taking office. And that was because I used my office to build independent movements and to go to war against the Democratic establishment rather than trying to appease it. Through my office, we built strong enough movements that succeeded in defeating billionaires like Jeff Bezos. And we showed, yes, Jeff Bezos can be fucking defeated. And we won the Amazon tax, which is raising, as we speak, every year, hundreds of millions of dollars for affordable housing. And every year after the Amazon tax, we kept increasing the Amazon tax. 1 year, we increased it to provide free abortion for all women who need it in Seattle. The next year, we won another increase of $20 million per year to fund mental health services for Seattle's public school students. Then another year, we won even more funds to build affordable housing, publicly owned affordable housing that is dedicated to the Black working class and poor community members, which is, in our view, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, reparations program that has been won for Black people in recent years. The nurses' union leadership in California, while well-intentioned, has allowed the movement in California to result in repeated defeats because of their insistence on tying the movement to the Democratic Party despite the Democratic Party's betrayals, and because of the union leadership's failure and refusal, really, to take the most crucial step that is necessary if we are to win universal health care, which is breaking from the Democratic Party and waging an independent offensive campaign against the rich and both their parties. But now, the leadership of the nurses' union, after this third defeat, you would think they would learn something. But what have they done? What have they done in the wake of this third defeat at the hands of the Democratic Party? Not only have they proudly endorsed a prominent Democrat for the race of governor in California, they have endorsed a hedge fund billionaire for governor. I mean, in general, you don't need to explain that billionaires, make their money from carrying out evil against the rest of the world. But if you want to talk about it, I can give you some information. Tom Steyer, the guy that they have endorsed, he is one of the worst kinds of billionaires because all his money comes not from actually providing a service but then underpaying all the workers to make profits, which is bad enough, just general capitalism. But this is even worse. His money comes from actually being a 100% parasite on poor and working class people, making money off the debt on the backs of the poorest and the most vulnerable people in countries like Ethiopia and Mozambique. And now, most recently, the debt on working and poor people in Puerto Rico. This is an absolutely dead-end strategy for the labor movement. And we, as the working class, as the rank and file of the labor movement, we have no hope of winning anything like universal health care, free health care, ending the wars, expanding the union movement, unless there is a reckoning in the labor movement and we throw out this labor leadership that has completely failed us. But the problems are even bigger. Do you know what happened this week, just a few days ago? California Democratic Socialists of America leadership announced that they have endorsed Tom Steyer for governor of California. It is I am not surprised, but it is just shocking. It is shocking that an organization that calls itself socialist would endorse a billionaire governor, billionaire for governor.
Shame.
This is the impasse that we have to break, and without which we will not win. And when people tell you, oh, I agree with the things that Kshama stands for, but she's just not nice. She's not nice to the leadership of the labor movement and DSA. Tell them that the strategy of those people has completely failed us, and it's time to actually learn the lessons from history and fight and to build independent movements. That's what this is about. This is not about any individual.
That's right.
And we are on a knife's edge here, because on the one hand, it is an incredible moment for us to be building this campaign. Never before in our lifetimes have we seen such anger roiling in American society, where people are just hungry for a fight back. Never before have we had such a moment where we can unite people from all states, regardless of whether they voted for Trump or didn't vote at all, or voted for Harris or voted for someone else, and people who are in red states, blue states, purple states, people who say they are right-wing, but working people who need healthcare as much as we do in Seattle. Never has there been a moment like this where we had the potential to build mass fighting movements. At the same time, never has there been a moment where there is such a chasm between the anger and the leadership that's on offer. This is why this campaign is so crucial, because this campaign is the only national movement at this moment that is providing the kind of leadership that we need. It is not about building anyone's career. Careerism is absolutely horrific to building movements. We are running this campaign because we want to be able to use our elected office, and I say our, not mine, our elected office, in order to fight for people. I have pledged that if I am elected, I will turn my congressional inauguration into a mass rally of 10,000 people in Washington, D.C., and immediately use our office, elected office, to launch mass movements nationally for free healthcare for all and to end the spending on the wars. I'm sure others will be able to speak about this in more detail, but the experience, the history of nations like Canada and the UK, which actually succeeded in winning publicly funded healthcare that is available for everyone, that experience and that history shows that it was only possible because of militant movements that actually, in fact, were led, many of them, by Marxists like ourselves, like my fellow revolutionary socialists and I, who posed a concrete threat to the establishment and their parties. And it also took the building of new working class parties to win publicly funded healthcare. That is what we will need to do. This campaign, and if we win this election, it's by itself going to launch a new party, but it will absolutely be a kind of parting of the waters for us to be able to make breakthroughs, to begin building a new party for the working class. That is how much is at stake for us in this campaign. But let's make no mistake, we are up against a really uphill task. As Justin mentioned, we now know who all the candidates are running, and others are going to talk about this, but it's incredible. The Republican candidate who has entered the race, he openly said that he entered the race only because the ruling class is extremely worried that our revolutionary socialist campaign might win. They're making it very, they're making it very clear that the Democrats and Republicans are making common cause. They're going to make common cause to try and defeat our campaign. And this campaign is not about Kshama Sawant. This campaign is about the right of American working class people across ethnicity and nationality and any other differences. Our right to have a decent society and a decent life. So let's build this campaign to defend that right, and let's make sure that the next 3 months are massive campaigning months, because if we don't get into the general election, we don't get to win the election. So right now, it is important for us to build the vote strong enough that we are one of the top 2 candidates who go into the general election. Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Kshama, for that incredible start to our town hall. So our next speaker participated in many of Kshama Sawant's Seattle City Council election campaigns and in the historic movements she led for renters' rights. He's been a rank and file member of the teachers union for years and has participated in part of the effort to rebuild a fighting labor movement that is ready to take strike action, which is what we need, as Kshama said. He is now an organizer with Kshama's Independent Socialist Campaign for Congress. Welcome, Joe Sugru.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you so much, Kshama, for that excellent speech, for the start to our discussion here today, our discussion that feels more like a rally. My name is Joe, and I'm a music teacher, and like Justin said, I'm also with the Kshama for Congress campaign. And can we celebrate one more time for the fact that our independent socialist revolutionary campaign, Kshama Sawant, is on the ballot? That's a big deal. As everybody here knows, winning this campaign will take resources, and we're going up against both parties of big business, the Zionist pro-genocide lobby, and the billionaire class. And so today I'm going to name some dollar amounts, and if you hear an amount you can donate, please raise your hand. A volunteer will then help you process your donation. We take card, cash, or Zelle payments, and if you are on the live stream, the donate link will be shared in the chat. We have busy lives, and oftentimes people forget to do things at home, so please talk to one of us today so that you can donate. The establishment sees that our campaign is a threat to both the Republican and Democratic parties, and also to the credentials of self-described progressives in Congress, like Kshama had mentioned. And so this week, Republican Doug Bassler entered the race for Washington State's 9th Congressional District. Recently, and Kshama just mentioned this, Doug Bassler stated, quote, "With the entrance of the socialist candidate from Seattle, many of our local folks have approached me with the request that I run again for U.S. Congress." Notice that he didn't say Kshama's name. That's because they're afraid of our campaign. They don't want to give us any more publicity because working people are so freaking stoked about what we're fighting for. And let's be clear, the Republicans love Adam Smith, but both parties of big business want Bassler in the race to try and block Kshama. Are we going to let them do that? No, we're not. And now that Kshama is on the ballot this month, we have an ambitious but necessary target of raising $75,000 because that's what it's going to take to defeat Adam Smith or any other candidate. When Kshama was on the Seattle City Council, she did something unique in U.S. politics today. She refused to take the six-figure salary Seattle City Council members pay themselves. And instead, Kshama took only the average worker's wage and gave the rest after taxes to a solidarity fund for workers' struggles and social movements. Yeah. This is because, unlike other politicians, when Kshama got elected, she didn't sell out and make a career for herself, but instead went to war against the political establishment and led movements of thousands of working class people to fight for and win the $15 minimum wage and to tax Amazon and other wealthy corporations to fund affordable housing. We need representatives like Kshama who lead movements and go on the offensive, not more gatekeepers who steer movements down dead-end paths. The maximum amount an individual can donate to the campaign is $3,500. Donations can be made either at one time or over the next 3 months until the primary in early August. Has anyone here today already donated $500 or more to our campaign? That's awesome. Give it up. So is there anybody here today that can match them and either donate $500 right now or $166 a month for the next 3 months. Thank you so much. Someone will come help. That's fantastic. Thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you. Kshama's main opponent, genocidal Democrat Adam Smith, has been in office for nearly 30 years, and he has been a general for the warmongering billionaires, every single one of them. He voted for the war in Iraq and countless other wars in the Middle East. He voted for the $900 billion war funding this past December and to create and fund ICE. One of his first acts in Congress was to cut $150 billion from Medicare and Medicaid. And in 2022, he voted to break the railroad strike. We need to be so clear about this. The labor movement cannot support strike breakers or billionaires. And if your union does, you need to organize with Kshama Sawant's campaign and organize with Workers Strike Back and Fight Back. And it's more than that. It's that strike breakers must be defeated. Adam Smith has voted for tens of billions of dollars to fund the genocide that continues to take place in Gaza. And he's been rewarded for his pro-genocide politics. He has received over $1.3 million from the Zionist lobby over his career. Electing Kshama to Congress will be a complete game changer for the working class. Kshama's election will especially be an unprecedented breakthrough for the anti-war movement. She'll use her office to organize working people across the country and pose a serious threat to the political establishment's wars machine, just like she did on the Seattle City Council for 10 years. Is there anybody today who can contribute to this $75,000 target and can donate $250 or $83 a month for the next 3 months? Thank you so much. Is there anybody here who can donate $100 or $33 a month until the primary? Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. That's fantastic. Working people in the district and in the whole country are done with both the Republican and the Democratic Party. When we canvass in the district and people say, I don't do politics, we've often responded with, I totally get that. Politics is usually terrible. And depending on who I'm talking about, I'll say politics is usually bullshit. But Kshama Sawant is different. She has a real track record of winning victories for the working class, and she's now fighting for a $25 minimum wage, free health care, and a massive expansion of social housing by taxing the rich, and to end the genocide in Gaza and all imperious wars. And she's doing this independent of the Democratic Party, and people grab the clipboards for us and want to get involved. Adam Smith's money is coming from the very rich, and his median donation is $1,000, while Kshama's donations come from ordinary working people with a median donation of $25. To offset Adam Smith's mega donors, some of the very same people who donate to Donald Trump, we need thousands of working people to donate what they can. Through thousands of working class donations, Kshama's past campaigns broke all fundraising records in Seattle without taking a dime in corporate cash. And our campaign currently has 7 times as many donations as Smith's, and we've already raised over $500,000. Yeah. So to get us that much closer to $75,000 in May, can anyone here or on the live stream donate the median donation of $25 or any amount today, $15 or $10, to help fund this anti-war pro-worker campaign? Awesome. Thank you so much. We've got folks in the live stream donating as well. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and solidarity.
All right, everyone. That was incredible. By my count, we may have raised over $2,000 from that, so this is a really big help. All right, so we're going to have a few featured speakers today. So our next speaker is going to be Josie Ebelhair. And Josie is a social worker and rank and file member in Washington State's Public Sector Union, the Washington Federation of State Employees, which in turn is affiliated with the National Public Sector Union, AFSCME, or the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Josie is also a member of Workers Strike Back. Last year, she led a courageous fight back in her union against brutal budget cuts by the Democratic Washington State Governor Bob Ferguson and the Democrat-dominated Washington State Legislature. Welcome, Josie.
Hi, everyone. As our campaign predicted from the time that we launched, the billionaires and their parties will do whatever they can to try and prevent Kshama from being elected. This is what they did every single time, trying to defeat Kshama on the city council, and they did not succeed. But we were only able to defeat them because we built really strong and strategic campaigns with hundreds of volunteers fighting to win our elections. And that is what we're going to need now, except we need it on a much larger scale because this is a much harder fight. Kshama is running as a revolutionary anti-war socialist who is fighting to end all weapons and tech for imperialist war, to win free healthcare for all, funded by taxing the rich, to shut down ICE, and for national rent control. These demands alone are hated by the ruling class and their two parties. Even the message of these demands terrifies them. But this year, it's much, much more than that. This campaign is happening at an unprecedented moment in American history and politics. Never before has there been such a powerful majority support for things like universal publicly funded healthcare, affordable housing, and taxing the rich. This support spans the nation, including so-called blue states, red states, and purple states. Never in the 80-year history of the existence of the Israeli state, which has always been a brutal geopolitical project of American and Western imperialism, has there been a time when the majority of American working people are against the politics of the Israeli state and angry at the genocide and horrific occupation of Palestinian lands. In fact, even a majority of Republican voters under the age of 50 now have a negative view of the Israeli state. There is a mass anger at both the Democratic and Republican parties, and they are on the defensive. Having an independent socialist candidate is not what the Democrats and Republicans want. But what they really, really do not want is for that candidate to be Kshama Sawant. The ruling class and their parties have seen for over a decade how Kshama went to war against big business and the political establishment. They have seen her use her elected office to win working class victories that were thought as impossible, like the nation's highest minimum wage at $21.30 an hour, and defeating billionaires to win the Amazon tax to fund affordable housing to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars every year. So we also knew that the billionaires and their two parties would try to strategize in an effort to keep Kshama and the working class from winning. The Republican Party's Doug Bassler just entered the race for Washington State's 9th Congressional District, recently publicly declaring, which I'll say, Joe said it, but I'll say it again. With the entrance of the socialist candidate from Seattle, many of our local folks have approached me with the request that I run for U.S. Congress. And I think we know local folks means billionaires and their lobbyists. I think that's pretty clear. And I think also we have talked to thousands of working people, actual local folks in this district. We have raised over 4,000, we've gathered over 4,000 signatures to get Kshama on the ballot, and they want a socialist to run. As Kshama said on social media yesterday, sometimes politicians in both parties of the billionaires, they say the quiet part out loud. Bassler has since quickly moved to delete this statement from his website, but the motivation of the establishment is still clear: to try and block our independent socialist campaign by any means necessary. Bassler and the Republican Party are clearly not running to try to defeat Democratic incumbent Adam Smith. Why would they? When Adam Smith has been such a dogged representative of the war profiteers, Zionist lobby, and the billionaire class. As one right-wing commenter remarked, Smith sounds more like a Republican than a lot of Republicans. For the Republican Party, this is not about defeating neoliberal warmonger Smith. No Republican has broken 30% of the vote against Smith in 15 years, including Bassler himself, who has previously run against Smith many times. Both parties regularly collude to block working class candidates by electoral maneuvers. In 2020, the Democratic leadership, led by Obama, worked to push several corporate Democrats out of the race in the run up to Super Tuesday, while leaving Elizabeth Warren to divide the vote with Bernie Sanders. A successful coup that put Joe Biden at the top, despite the total lack of enthusiasm for his candidacy. This move to retain Bassler as the lone Republican candidate is yet another reminder that both parties are determinedly united in keeping any working class challenge out of Congress. And let's not fall for the political theater of the Democratic and Republican parties posing as mortal enemies. They each want to win elections against each other, but they both represent the ruling class, and they are both enemies of working people. And they are in complete agreement on the priority of trying to block an independent socialist from getting into Congress. Working people also, unfortunately, cannot put faith in Melissa Chaudhry, who is running as a progressive Democrat in the race. Chaudhry ran against Smith in 2024, and in that campaign, she said that she was against the genocide in Gaza. However, in order to actually end this genocide, the wars, and the occupation, we need to build a movement to fight to permanently end all military aid to Israel. It's not enough to vote for a bit better than Adam Smith. Many progressive Democrats voted against the worst genocidal bills, but then also repeatedly and two-facedly sent money for Israel's Iron Dome system, which is very much a part of the genocidal apparatus, and they could not carry out a genocide without it. We need candidates who are prepared to build movements that will antagonize the Democratic and Republican parties and the billionaire class, not to keep peace with them. We desperately need working class anti-war fighter like Kshama in Congress. Far from having a strategy or willingness to fight the two warmongering parties, Melissa Chaudhry has made it clear that she is not prepared to fight in the way that Kshama did during her decade on the city council. Chaudhry said, I cannot change the makeup of 535 people I cannot change the makeup of 535 people right now. I cannot convince 535 people of anything, but I can become one of them, right? Wrong. Wrong. Kshama has shown that what we need and what can be done is to use elected office to build mass movements of that the Democrats and Republicans fear deeply and that force them to concede, not to quote unquote become one of them. The last thing that working people need is yet another politician who seeks to keep peace with the party leadership, which only leads them to betraying us. During the 2024 election cycle, Chaudhry also said about herself and Adam Smith, in many fronts, we are aligned. Honestly, so if you like how he votes for the Green New Deal and housing and education stuff, you will like how I vote for all of that. But no, working people do not like how Adam Smith has voted for all of this stuff. Adam Smith voted to break the railroad strike in 2022. He voted for $127 billion in cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. Under both Republican President Bush and Democratic President Obama, Adam Smith repeatedly voted to bail out the big banks after the Great Recession, which plundered the millions who faced home foreclosures and handed over tens of billions of dollars worth of real estate to private equity. The bipartisan robbery against working people is a big reason why rents have been skyrocketing. In 2011, Adam Smith voted to cut $98 billion from various programs, including billions of dollars in cuts to publicly funded rent-controlled housing. He is bankrolled by the billionaire and Zionist lobby, and he receives the most money from weapons manufacturing of any Democrat in the House. Business as usual politicians are simply not an alternative to Adam Smith. We need to go all out and elect Kshama as the first ever revolutionary socialist in Congress. Winning this election would be a historic step towards building a new party for the working class and would deal a gigantic blow to Wall Street and both parties of war and genocide. Solidarity.
All right, thank you so much, Josie. This is an awesome start. Next, we'll hear from Omar, a Palestinian-American student at the University of Washington Medical School. He's been active on the UW campus against the genocide in Gaza, demanding that the UW administration divest from genocidal and warmongering corporations. So let's give a big welcome to Omar.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be among so many people that for a change to the system and to the status quo. So, as a medical student in the University of Washington, as a member of Physicians for National Health Program in Washington State, I think it's reasonable for me to share a story of a friend of mine, a relative, and I'm pretty sure many of us can relate and know someone who falls into that category in the same state. So this friend's own father had a coronary artery bypass surgery, a life-saving cardiac surgery in around 15 years ago that costed around $250,000, and has chronic kidney issues requiring weekly dialysis that cost thousands of dollars, and also multiple hospitalization, each hospital night costing many thousands of dollars. Over the past 15 years, he is in around $5 million in medical debt. How many Americans can relate? How many among us fall into the same exact situation and feel betrayed from our own government in receiving the minimal health care and basic human needs? I think I want to talk about how healthcare defunding, I wouldn't call it like funding, defunding has been impacting us. I have been talking to some of my colleagues and some medical researchers, and they give me actually a very interesting statistic. They told me that the National Institute of Health funding for 2026 was around $47 billion. The B-2 bomber project costed over 30 years ago around $45 billion. This is the National Institute of Health. Can you imagine how many sub-programs, how much medical research, life-saving research in the development of medicines, of treatments, is being put on the side so we can have more aircrafts, more bombs to kill innocent children across the world? I'm saying this because if we make that conversion, you can see that how many people who are disabled, who have rare diseases, who have neurological, cardiac issues, cancers, feel betrayed that no one is even bothering researching what their condition is, let alone treating them, let alone paying for their basic needs outside of that. So this is the state of healthcare in the biggest economy in the world. So I want to say that today I am very discontent with all the politicians we have been having, including Adam Smith, who have received nearly $500,000 from ABAC. I want to say that the last presidential elections have proven that it's no longer enough for politicians to negotiate the least disruptive concessions to their donors that they can give us. We no longer want politicians who are willing, who approach us in a negotiating manner, giving us the absolute bare minimum. We want politicians from us, who represent us, who share our concerns and voices. And just an example, the student encampments across the country, including the ones here in Washington State. Thousands of students risk their professional futures, their careers, and everything. I've stayed there for weeks, sleeping in tents, and votes for divestments passing every single student senate, faculty senate. Regardless of that, no real changes. All these votes have been watered down by administrations who do not represent or even bother to hear our voices. The American people are no longer content with this. We want a change. We want politicians to serve us, not serve us the absolute minimum. And I might be near time for my speech, but I want to say, you know who else is near time? All of us. It's near time
that we take a stance. It's near time that we realize that the fight, the anti-war fight, is the same fight as the healthcare fight. The anti-war fight is the Free Palestine fight. It's the Black Lives Matter fight. It's the social justice fight. It's the end the siege in Cuba fight. It is the same fight, and we no longer need one-cause fighters. We need fighters who fight for all of us. I want to say, lastly, I want to say that advocacy and movements that shy away from scratching the skin of institutions, of the status quo, it's not real advocacy. There is never going to be a change without challenging the system, without disrupting the system, without hurting the system. They need to know that we are not nice candidates, we are not nice movements, we are movements who want change. And for that, I want to say, I truly support Kshama's campaign, and I think we all need to realize that for us to achieve that change, we need to support this campaign, and this campaign might not guarantee its victory in this particular elections. However, if we do not challenge the status quo, if we do not challenge these candidates who accept super PAC money, we are never going to see a change. We're always going to be stuck in this deadlock, in this endless cycle of senseless wars, bloodshed, and letting our loved ones die because we can't afford healthcare. So I say, maybe it's not our duty to win this particular battle, but it's our absolute duty to challenge and to stand up, because for the hope that we ever win this battle or any battle, we have to stand and fight. So Kshama, best of luck, and thank you, everybody.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Omar. So our next speaker is Yusuf Abdi. He's a community member and a security professional based in Seattle with a strong interest in workers' rights, immigrant communities, and global security issues. He's been excited to support the campaign and will speak about community engagement and organizing. So let's welcome Yusuf.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Yusuf Abdi, and I am proud to be here today from the Somali community, Somali American community. As we were facing a lot of difficulties in this administration, and today it will be the last year that we will face such kind of aggressive words that we had already met with the current administration. My community, as a Somali American community and immigrant, we are ready and already ready to send Kshama Swan to the Congress. I want to begin talking about community engagement, workers' rights, and public safety. Many people in Seattle and across this country are experiencing everyday economic pressure, and not only economic pressure, but daily life. Sometimes working families are struggling with rising rent, food prices, transportation costs, healthcare expenses, and job security. Many people work full-time, even more than full-time, sometimes even multiple jobs, as I also do, and still they feel like they are falling behind our demands. That is not just an economic issue, but it is a human issue. Workers deserve dignity, respect, fair wages, and safe working conditions, whether someone works in security, healthcare, transportation, retail, warehouses, cleaning services, or technology. Every worker contributes to the society and deserves to be treated with value. Strong labor protections are not only good for workers, they strengthen communities, American community, and create stability for families. As someone working in security field like me, I understand how important security is to all communities, but through public safety, it's not only about enforcement, but real safety comes when people have opportunities, housing, education, healthy care, and hope for the future. When the communities are ignored, underfunded, or divided, insecurity grows up. When communities are supported and included, not excluded, stability grows. I also want to speak about immigrant communities. Sierra is a city built with immigrants, refugees, and diverse cultures. Many immigrants come here seeking safety, opportunity, education, and peace for their families, as I also do. They contribute through hard work, entrepreneurship, culture, and service, yet many still face barriers, whether it's including language barriers, immigration challenges, sometimes discrimination, and economic hardship. We should continue building policies and community programs that support immigrants with education, job opportunities, legal resources, health care across the state, and pathways toward stability. Supporting immigrants' families is not charity. It's not just charity. It's an investment in the future of our communities and our country. Another important issue is youth engagement. Young people today face many pressure, social isolation, violence, online misinformation, lack of opportunities, and uncertainty about their future. We need more mentorship programs, educational opportunities, internships, like university internships or whatever it is, community centers, and leadership programs to help young people succeed. If we invest in youth today, we create a stronger and safer community tomorrow. Finally, I want to briefly touch on global security and peace building. Because local issues and global issues are increasingly connected, what we call in universities globalization. Conflict, instability, poverty, displacement, and climate challenges around the world affect communities everywhere, including here in Sierra. We need leadership that values diplomacy, human rights, cooperation, and peace alongside security, and economic development. At the local level, we can all contribute by staying engaged, volunteering, listening to one another, and supporting policies that our Congress came with, as she has already spoken from our hearts and what we were thinking about. Kshama Swan has already came with it. Change does not happen only in government buildings. It also happens in communities, conversations, campaigns, workplaces, and neighborhoods. I appreciate everyone here today who is organizing, volunteering, participating in civic engagement. Democracy becomes stronger when ordinary people become involved. Thank you again. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I look forward to contributing and continuing support positive change in our communities that was led by Kshama Swan. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Yusuf. So our next speaker is Bet Capehart. Bet is a longtime activist for universal health care in Washington State. She's a former board member of Physicians for a National Health Plan, and she's a longtime supporter of Kshama and our struggles for working people. Please welcome Bet.
Well, it's terrible being the last person. Everyone is so wonderful and dynamic, and I really can't follow that at all. The last time I think I was the first person, and I was so excited because it was over. I did it, and it was over. At any case, yes, I'm Bet, and I've been an advocate for single-payer healthcare for all since probably 2009. And I'm still a member of PNHP, but I'm not on the board anymore. And my colleagues, Omar and John Kearney, who's in the audience here, they are on the board of PNHP. And basically, I put my faith in the medical students who are members of PNHP. And when I donate to the medical students, and not the whole organization. I had to leave the board position with PNHP over the issue of the genocide. The medical students brought a petition to us. It was from the healthcare workers for Palestine, and it was at the very beginning of the genocide. And we were to discuss that and take a vote on that. And it was the medical students and probably two of the more mature, including myself, board members, who supported that petition absolutely. And we lost. And I couldn't sit with that. And I think I'm kind of not doing what I'm supposed to do. But I think that experience is very similar to the disappointment that lots of us have around organizations and nonprofits during this genocide who have not stepped up and taken a position and been forceful, and instead sort of still cowering to the Democrats. Because after all, the Democrats gave us the genocide. Let's not forget that. So I just wanted to say that to start. But I do want to say that just to give a couple of statistics about the position of our healthcare system, or the lack of a healthcare system in this country. Our system is broken. We all know that. We've heard people talk about the bankruptcies that occur. Well, not only do we have an amazing bankruptcy caused by healthcare debt, but usually about 80% of those people declaring bankruptcy have health care. But their health care do not cover the extent of what their illnesses are. So it's pretty amazing. Further statistics, 30 million people are uninsured in this country, and it's probably more now that all of the so-called relief from ACA have gone away or diminished. Over 50 million people are underinsured. I did that already, sorry. 2/3 of Americans support universal public health, but we don't have it. Why don't we have it? We have all of these people in the Progressive Caucus of Congress who say they support health care. We have the squad members, who are supposed to be the most progressive, who say this. Basically, what we have and the difference between those people and those politicians and Kshama is that those are platitudes being offered to the American population. Just say that you are for all of these things. Do not work your behind off to get them. Do not try to develop a movement. And then you just stay on year after year saying you're going to do this. In the case of all of the bills that we have seen, in recent times go through Congress, starting with John Conyers, House Bill 676, never had a discussion really on the floor, had a few signatories to it. Jayapal came into power in 2016 and developed, I think it was 1804. And there's never been a discussion on the congressional floor about this. Even though, as Kshama has pointed out, there have been numerous times when the Democrats have had a trifecta or at least control the House. And there was a movement called Enforce the Vote. Actually, we got PNHP to support that. That was good. To basically, Pelosi was running again for Speaker of the House. The Force the Vote was do not, and she was dependent on the so-called Progressive Caucus, particularly the squad, to support her nomination. And we said, please do not do that unless you get Medicare for all on the floor, discussed, a big discussion so people would be re-educated about this movement, and then say what you're going to do. Well, that didn't happen. AOC said that Pelosi promised her a really important position on a really important committee, and that she couldn't not vote for her. So we lost that opportunity. And so really, what we are looking at is we have to back Kshama. If this is not the time when we and everyone we know don't come out for Kshama, who always has a fighting strategy, she has proven that from being in the city council in Seattle, it's not enough to just tell people that you're for something. You have to develop a movement and move that issue along and demand those things. Let me see what. I want to end. Oh, thank you. A couple of things I want to say is that, in our country, healthcare is looked at as a commodity. It's a thing that you buy into. I'll try to talk louder. Can you hear me now? Okay. It's not something that we consider is a human right or a social good. We, meaning our government. Every few years, the Human Rights Committee at the United Nations looks at this issue. They look at many issues, but they look particularly at health care and try to do an evaluation on where nations are in providing these social goods to their populations. And every single time, usually it's the National Lawyers Guild Healthcare Committee that does the report. and presents it to the Human Rights Committee. The United States retort to why we don't have a socialized healthcare system is that we can't afford it yet. That is what they have said numerous times. When the Universal Declaration of Human Rights came out with these rights that we have, including health care, it was quite clear that a lot of countries in the world were just decolonized. So there was the United Nations said, well, it's going to take these nations in Africa, Asia, quite a bit of time, a lot of time to develop because they've been underdeveloped by their colonialists, the colonial powers. And so those things were left for developing countries that they would slowly, incrementally get there, not for the most powerful, richest country in the world, the United States, to have an excuse that they couldn't afford it. Let's see. I think I'm almost done. I do want to say that the last story I want to tell is a really good one. Kshama spoke at PNHP's annual meeting. This was probably, when was that? It was years ago. Yeah, 2010. Yeah, that was a long time ago. And Jim McDermott, so I'm in Congressional District 7, and that's Jayapal's district. She's our person. She's not my person. But Jim McDermott had been the representative for District 7 forever, like forever and ever. And I can't think of anything that he really did, except at our encouragement, he got our neighbor who was from Ukraine, whose mother was constantly refused a visa to visit her daughter. I said, well, McDermott doesn't do anything else. He can probably get you a visa from the State Department. And he did that. Well, this was a meeting. This was an annual meeting. Kshama was speaking, and she was on a panel. And Kshama talked about, the problems of getting health care, and we needed to do this, immediately. And Jim McDermott said, that young lady, meaning Kshama, knows that it's going to take at least 20 years for us to get a single-payer Medicare for all system. And he went on, and Kshama waited, and when it was her turn to speak again, Kshama said, the congressman says it's going to take us 20 years to get health care for everyone. But when Boeing wants something, they go in a room with the congressional people, and in 45 minutes they come out with a deal. So why is that? So thank you for listening to my anecdote.
All right, thank you so much, Bet, and let's give another round of applause for all of our featured speakers today. So next we'll go to our public comment portion, and we're gonna have not too much time today, but we'll have people come up to the podium with questions or other contributions to the discussion, and so I'll explain how that's gonna work. I'll be creating a list of people who want to speak, and we'll go through that list. You'll have to come up to the front to use the microphone, and we'll give people about 3 minutes to say what you want to say, and there'll be a timekeeper, Patrick, up front here letting you know when you have 1 minute left and when you should wrap up, so that hopefully we'll have time for a few people. To get yourself added to the list of people who want to speak, I'll take hands in a moment, and I'll just ask for your name, and depending on how many people want to speak, we may not have time to get through everyone, but you can always talk to someone from the campaign after the event is over. So just some ideas of things people can talk about. We can talk about how the wars and the healthcare crisis have affected you. If you're a longtime Kshama supporter, you could talk about any of the movements that you were involved in, that she led in Seattle. Or if you have a question for Kshama, she'll be coming up again at the end to respond to points. So let me just grab my notebook. Yeah, is there anyone who would like to speak today? Okay, well, So we have Sonia. What is your name? Sean. Okay, Sean. And Patrick. And what's your name? Caroline. Okay. Okay. So let's start with Sonia. Welcome, Sonia.
Hi there. Hi there. I'm Sonia. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back. I'm also a volunteer on the campaign. And I'm almost ready to get onto Medicare. So I started doing some research, and I had no idea it was so complicated. The bipartisan project by the Democratic and Republican parties who have continually attacked it make it really difficult to access for nearly 70 million working class retirees and people with disabilities who desperately need it. So after speaking with a lot of other people approaching retirement age, I realized that many are shocked to discover that you're not actually automatically enrolled. You have to navigate quite a bit of paperwork and bureaucracy. There's a 6-month enrollment window around your birthday and penalties. You still get to pay premiums, and you have limited coverage on dental and vision, and you probably need supplemental insurance. So it turns out that Medicare, even it's one of the most widely popular programs in the US, has been subjected to vicious attacks by the Democratic and Republican parties. So these users, Medicare users, are forced to navigate the private insurers, supplemental plans, income calculations, endless bureaucracy. So for millions of seniors and disabled people, the costs are not small. Many people are still forced to ration care, daily treatment, and they worry constantly about medical expenses, even after reaching Medicare. Many people feel angry and frustrated, and they say, I paid into the system my whole life. I thought I already paid for it, and this is an entitlement that our politicians say we can't afford? And they're absolutely right to be angry and to ask this question. Before we had Medicare, millions of seniors had little or none at all. The private insurers wouldn't cover them, or they charged too much and they couldn't afford it. So again, seniors, you heard, were forced to choose between food, housing, and Medicare. This is medical care. This is true. So when Medicare was first proposed, opponents attacked it as socialized medicine and claimed it would destroy the economy. The same arguments we still hear today, especially when free health care for all is mentioned. Medicare becoming law in 1965 was a major historic victory won through mass struggle during a period of nationwide fighting movements for civil rights, labor strikes, and protests against the American imperialist war on Vietnam. The story of Medicare is a reminder both that working people can win huge victories when we get organized with a fighting strategy, and at the same time that the capitalist class will try to snatch back what we do win. This is why I am a revolutionary socialist, because I think capitalism as a system needs to be replaced with a socialist world. Socialism would mean the world's resources are owned not by a few wealthy people, but democratically by all working people. Medicare was a phenomenal concession mass movements wrenched from the ruling class who hated it. The Democrats and Republicans, both who represent the ruling classes, have systematically attacked Medicare. Instead of replacing the profit-driven healthcare system, Medicare was just layered on top of it. So this meant that almost immediately after Medicare was won, the wealthy wanted to privatize it. In fact, as was mentioned, the door to privatizing Medicare was opened by Democratic President Bill Clinton and his Balanced Budget Act. He cut $127 billion from Medicare and Medicaid. And as Kshama mentioned, her opponent, Democrat Adam Smith, he voted in favor of that bill. So this privatization has meant that even with Medicare, millions still can't afford health care because billionaires are still getting rich off our misery and suffering. So this is why Kshama's campaign is fighting for free health care for all that covers all health care needs for everyone, all of it funded by taxing the super fucking rich, no insurance company trying to deny you coverage, or no for-profit hospitals bankrupting you. Also, workers pay Medicare taxes out of every paycheck. Billionaires make most of their income from investments that are not subject to payroll taxes at all. And at the same time, we see how Amazon is accumulating staggering wealth while the rest of these people are rationing insulin and delaying treatment. So we know that the wealth exists already. We can have comprehensive health care, including mental health care, dental care, preventative care, and community clinics for everyone. So we need it, yes, but history also shows that no real progressive change under capitalism is handed down from above. Governments under capitalism act when pressured by crisis or by powerful social movements. During World War II, the United States created universal health care because women had to fill the jobs that men left behind to fight that war. Once the war was over and pressure disappeared, much of that childcare infrastructure was dismantled. The same lesson applies today. Many politicians claim they support health care for all, or reform, even Medicare for all, but they refuse to confront the real problem that is a healthcare system organized around private profit. Pramila Jayapal and Bernie Sanders, as mentioned, have introduced Medicare for all legislation repeatedly, with even Adam Smith suddenly signing on to it, as Kshama mentioned, because he's very scared of Kshama. But these bills are dead on arrival because of these establishment politicians have no strategy and absolutely no intention to actually fight the insurance industry. They want the rhetoric without the confrontation because they do not want to risk their place within this rotten capitalist system. So we must turn the widespread frustration into organized political action and independent leadership willing to actually fight for working people. So that's why I am fighting to elect Kshama Sawant to Congress, not simply to just cast votes in Washington, but to help build a mass movement capable of winning free health care for all by taxing the super rich. I hope that you will join me.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Next up, we'll have Sean. Yeah. Welcome, Sean.
Hi, my name is Sean. I'm very new to Seattle, and I came here from Maine, which is a complicated state politically. Very starkly divided between a much older population, actually the oldest population in the country, which is staunchly conservative, and a much more progressive coastal area, I guess not too dissimilar from Washington. I'm not unsympathetic to being uncompromising with our political leadership, or lack thereof, and their obsession with optics over actual action. However, is there a case to be made that maybe, at least in some limited exceptions, alliances need to be built? I remember in the case of Joe Biden's renewable energy bill, the world's best Democrat, Joe Manchin, insisted that he was added as a co-author on the bill, despite being one of its largest opponents. And to my sensibilities, that limited token of a completely meaningless token to get his approval and get his vote to actually pass that legislation seems like a small concession for meaningful change. So I'm curious, are there cases where exceptions should be made? And if not, how mechanistically do you get legislation passed without compromising? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Good questions that Kshama can answer at the end. Next, we'll go to Caroline. Welcome, Caroline.
Oh, thank you, Serpentine Caroline. It's a pleasure to be here with so many radical, compassionate people. And I'd like to say, in order for us to to win or to get things going, instead of complaining, let's come up with fantastic ideas. My history is as an osteopathic physical therapist, and I definitely was Medicare, Medicaid, the private insurance companies. What a mess, and how corrupt my experience with all that stuff, and doctors. And honestly, I worked on so many doctors who really didn't know so many basic holistic things about the way our bodies work. So I say respiratory images on public buses and things to stimulate cranial nerve activity for mental health. All these things that we can all do that are intrinsic in our bodies that are so wonderful, and teaching our public school children about our anatomy and our physiology and all the capabilities of our own healing ability should also be included in pushing for healthcare, so we're not so dependent on a system that is expensive and also often not very earth-friendly, right? The toxic chemicals from drugs and surgery can be devastating on people. I also like to say an option for, instead of evictions, getting rid of evictions, but if there is an issue with your rent, then two parties, the person, the manager of the apartment and the renter, needs to go to a place where they can work things out, and no one is going to be put on the streets. But why can't things be worked out instead of people being thrown in the streets or giving some huge bill? Why can't there be a place for things for people just to work things through the issues? That's all I have to say. I don't even need another minute. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Next, we'll go to Patrick. So welcome, Patrick.
Thanks, everyone. I want to take a few minutes to talk about how free public health care was won, especially in Canada, maybe a little bit in the UK, because these are examples we can draw from. The Canadian national healthcare system is actually a little newer than a lot of other public healthcare systems. It only expanded fully nationwide by 1972. But it started in Saskatchewan with the formation in the 1930s of this new political party called the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation. And this was a party that brought together working class people, labor unions, and farmers organized in the same political party. In the US, we're used to thinking of farmers as all being like sort of conservative, but that's actually a pretty new phenomenon. And historically, when really bad political time or economic times, like a Great Depression happened, working people and small farmers have a lot in common, and that was the basis of this organization, especially in a province like Saskatchewan. And in the economic devastation after World War II, one of the primary things that they fought for was hospital insurance. The healthcare system was completely privatized in Canada. There didn't really even exist like private healthcare. You were just paying out of pocket for everything if you could afford it, and most people couldn't afford it at all. And so labor unions started to organize, started to pass resolutions, organize rallies that passed union halls, and over time built the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation into the ruling party that eventually won politically in the province of Saskatchewan. And by 1947, they were the first province to have hospital insurance. So it wasn't even insurance that covered all healthcare, but if you went to the hospital, the government was paying for that. And that spread extremely quickly and was taken up by the broader Canadian labor movement, because it turns out when one place wins free healthcare, they really like it, and it's really popular, and everybody looks around and goes, oh my goodness, I want that too. And that built massive pressure across the country. And by 1961, every single province in Canada had hospital insurance. And it was because the other political parties in Canada were deathly afraid of the CCF, this independent working class political party, spreading throughout Canada and gaining even more power. By 1962, the Canadian Cooperative Commonwealth Federation is under pressure from their own base to implement a full public healthcare system in Saskatchewan, and that's what they do. And so this pretty small province, the population at the time was about the size of Seattle now, becomes the first place in Canada to have this Medicaid system of universal public healthcare for all. And it's so popular that the federal government in Canada implements a cost-sharing thing where by 1966, where they say, okay, if a province implements this, we'll split the cost. And so it was this victory in this kind of small, even like sort of backwater province in Canada, this victory by an independent working class political party that was the toehold that just, this is a mixed metaphor, broke the door open to spread to the rest of the country. And it's important to understand this example and how Canada won this, because it was by having a powerful labor movement that was taking up really radical demands. The industrial unions in Saskatchewan, their leadership, took up this demand for public health care and said, we're going to use these unions as a political weapon to fight for it. And that's something we need in the United States. It's a type of union leadership that's lacking right now, frankly, and we need somebody in office in a highly visible public position like Kshama to be able to force these labor unions to take up this fight. And we even saw the example of Bernie Sanders and his national profile and the way that injected so much life into the labor movement, and we saw waves of teacher strikes after that. This sort of national leadership is so key to being able to win public health care in the United States. They also were able to win because they had an independent party, an independent working class party. That's the same way that the NHS was won in the UK. It was the formation of the Labour Party and the Labour Party coming to power. That forced even conservatives, like massive numbers of conservative politicians in the UK voted to create the NHS because of the insane pressure they were under from this massive labor movement, from this independent political party representing the organized labor movement, and also from, frankly, the threat of the Russian Revolution and this example of a worker state spreading that they were desperately, desperately afraid of. You had conservatives forced to vote for the NHS. Josie mentioned earlier that Melissa Chaudhry has said, well, you know, I'm not going to change the mind of other people in Congress, but I can get elected to be one of them. Actually, the job of Kshama Sawant when we elect her to Congress will be to build movements that force these people to change their fucking minds because they're afraid as hell. That's how we're going to win free public health care in the U.S. So if you haven't donated to help reach our fundraising goal yet, you should do that. And if you haven't come out to volunteer on the campaign and talk to other voters in the district, you need to get signed up today to do that too.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. Yeah, next we'll go to Neil and then Joe, and then we'll hand it back to Kshama. So welcome, Neil.
Hey, everyone. Thanks. Super quick. So I wanted to say I appreciate, Sean, is it, your question about coalitions and working with people and all that. But what I wanted to sort of tease out a little bit are the results of that specific example, the climate bill. I'm speaking as one of the chumps who wrote letters, phone banks with Pramila Jayapal, donated money to Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema's campaign. Because I thought that it would result in building a greater coalition and get the things that I wanted. The climate bill specifically opens up millions of acres of public land that used to belong to you and me, to fossil fuel companies. It also opens up parts of protected and endangered wildlife refuges for drilling by fossil fuel companies. It also eases permitting restrictions that allow pipelines to be built quicker. Which is something that is currently resulting in greater ecological damage. It also does some things for the environment. It commits a lot of money to developing science fictional carbon capture technology that hasn't been invented yet. And for those of you that are kind of like, what the hell is he talking about? This was the strategy of the renewable energy policy under the Obama administration, the so-called all of the above energy policy. It was one that gave money to the fossil fuel companies, but also invested in renewables. That investment was in solar companies affiliated with some of Obama's friends in Silicon Valley. And for those of you who were there and remember this, all of those companies went bankrupt years later. So I have about as much faith in an all of the above policy as I do in Amazon's 2040 climate pledge. I don't mention this to undermine the question. It's a very good question and it's important. But what I want to suggest is that the net result of getting Joe Manchin involved was it felt good to have Joe Manchin involved. Wow, here's a super conservative anti-environment guy working on a climate bill. But the net result of it was a climate bill that wasn't a climate bill. It was a climate bill that was the end of my relationship with the Sunrise Movement because it did more for fossil fuel industries than it will ever do for the environment. So what I want to suggest is that it does feel good and it feels nice to talk about the alliances we can get, and there probably are strategic alliances to talk about. That's not me, I'm just a voter. But what I will say as a voter is that when they invited Joe Manchin to the party, they ruined my climate bill, right? And I regret having spent all of that time phone banking, being on video conferences with Pramila, donating money for the purpose of getting that bill. So what I want to suggest is that it is important that there are partners out there, but I question whether we would have gotten more from that bill if we hadn't spent time trying to make Joe Manchin happy than just kicking ass in the streets. Because I know that worked in Seattle, and that's why I'm done making friends with people like Joe Manchin. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. Next up, we'll go to Joe, and then we'll hand it back to Kshama. So welcome up, Joe, again.
Hello, everybody. Hearing everything that folks have had to say today, I felt inspired to just share a bit about my own story for a moment and then just make some of these links between healthcare and war that so many people have already made in a really great way. So when I was working as a band teacher in the North Shore School District, I was a member of the North Shore Education Association. And at that time, the district actually reopened our contract with the union after we had just voted on this contract, which I didn't vote for, but you know, it was the contract that was ratified. And the union leadership didn't fight back in any way against this. They just reopened the contract negotiations, and they accepted budget cuts. They just absolutely accepted these budget cuts. And we organized against this as Workers Strike Back, but I was basically one of two members, brand new to this huge workplace, huge district, you know, Bothell, Kenmore, Woodinville, huge district. And so we didn't win in that fight. It was the same year, however, though we did win $20 million for Seattle Public Schools mental health services, which is massive. But the point is that the union leadership, rather than putting up any sort of fight, and even with people who were in the union putting forward the actual strategy to fight back against that, laid off 70 people, cut an entire elementary instrumental music program, including my own job. And what was the healthcare that myself and these people got afterwards? So what ended up making the most sense for me, because this was towards the end of the year and all of my deductibles were paid off, was to get on the COBRA healthcare that had been negotiated between my union and the state. And that was over $900 a month. And I had just been laid off. And this is the kind of insurance that the union leadership had bargained for after not even fighting back against budget cuts. It's just completely despicable. And some more statistics. I mean, we know that at the beginning of the war anyway, maybe it's more now, I don't know, how much money was being spent every day in the war in Iran? $1 billion. The budget shortfall in the North Shore School District was $21 million, not even close to that. And Adam Smith has presided over the criminal underfunding of public education in the state of Washington, and he also gave $900 billion to that war in Iran. So getting Kshama elected and actually having a clear working class fighter that can put forward ideas at a rally of 10,000 people after being elected and well after that too, about how to actually organize in a union against budget cuts, for better healthcare, for free healthcare for all, for ending, war funding. These things are all completely related. And lastly, I would just say, Omar made a great point about electing somebody that's not nice. And I know what he means, because Kshama personally, if anyone's ever spoken with her, is extremely nice. She is. She really is. But do you know who she's not nice to? She's not nice to Adam Smith. She's not nice to the healthcare CEOs. She's not nice to the weapons manufacturers or the fucking labor bureaucrats that don't stand up for us. But she is a friend and a fighter to the working class, to the rank and file of the unions, and that's why we need to get her elected.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. So we'll now hand it back to Kshama to answer some points and some of the discussion. So welcome Kshama back.
It feels incorrect to come after that because I feel like that should have been the conclusion of the rally. Thank you all for speaking. Thanks especially to our featured speakers, Josie and Omar and Bet and Yusuf and Justin and Joe. One of the questions that came up on the live stream is what would it take for us to get on the ballot, and also what would it take for us to get into the general election. I think all of this, the mechanics of the logistics of it is that the top two vote getters of the primary get into the general election. So it's very simple, and it's one primary. It's not like a party-based primary. It's what's called a jungle primary. So just from a technicality standpoint, our campaign would have to be one of the two vote getters in order to be able to get into general election. But politically, obviously, it's a much bigger question because of everything that we've said today, which is that the ruling class, the billionaires and multimillionaires and their two parties are hardly about to let us just coast to the general election. It's not going to be that way. The next 3 months are going to be an enormous battleground. We should not underestimate the amount of fight back that we will have to carry out in order to get into the general election. Every vote is going to count. And that is why every volunteer shift is going to count. Every dollar that's donated is going to count. Every little thing is going to make the difference. And that's been our experience in the city council elections as well. Every victory was a narrow victory because we had so much stacked against us, which means that statistically speaking, every person who went out on a shift, every dollar that was donated by every working class person, everything counted, because that is how we were able to win. And I'll come back to this in a second, but it also relates to the question that I want to come to right now, which is Sean's question. I really appreciate you asking, Sean, isn't there something to be said about alliances that need to be built with, alliances, just to be clear, what we're talking about in the question is alliances of us working class movements and me as a working class representative with the Democrats or Republicans or with corporate politicians in general. And I thought Neil's contribution was extremely useful to, first of all, talk about the specific bill that you asked about, Sean, and I think that brilliantly illustrated this idea of alliance of any politician with an even more pro-corporate politician, which is what we're talking about. I mean, Joe Biden himself is a corporate politician. I mean, he's a politician of segregation, for fuck's sake, so let's not forget that. But then you have Joe Manchin, who is an even more starkly and nakedly pro-corporate politician. And so we're talking about an alliance between those two. And what was the result? The result was, without repeating what Neil said, was a bill that actually did not address the issues of the environment and actually ended up representing a betrayal of the climate justice movement. That's what it ended up being. And so we interpret this question, and this question is not, it's not a new question. I'm glad it came up today. I appreciate Sean asking this, because it is a question that many genuine people are wondering about, because that is what we are told by the corporate media. We're told this by the Democrats and Republicans. We're told that, and this will be, this talking point will be amplified 1,000,000-fold, just let's be prepared, in the next 3 months, because people cannot, the Democrats and Republicans, they can't actually attack our track record from the city council. They can't say we didn't win 15 because we actually won 15. They can't say we didn't win the Amazon tax because we did actually win the Amazon tax. They can't say that we didn't win unprecedented renters' rights because we actually did win unprecedented rights. They can't say that we didn't defeat the billionaires and corporate landlords because we did, by God, defeat the billionaires and the corporate landlords. So what are they going to rely on? They're going to rely on personal character assassination, saying Kshama is not nice and all that stuff. Or they'll talk about how they'll lie to you in your face, and they'll say, well, I agree with what she stands for, but I don't like that she doesn't compromise or that she doesn't cooperate with the Democrats and Republicans. And I think that bill that Neil described, I think, is a perfect example of what you get from alliances with the rich and powerful. And so, if I might reframe that question, I would reframe that question as, can you actually win any substantive victories for the working class as one single person? No, you cannot. Are alliances needed? Yes, but rather than use the word alliances, I would say mass movements. Mass movements really are, in some shape or form, alliances, but they are not alliances with the Joe Bidens and the Joe Manchins or even the Pramila Jayapals. They are movements that activate mass numbers of working class and poor people who have a huge stake in changing society in a progressive direction and who will fight alongside us if given a chance. And so, yes, do I want to build alliances? Yes, absolutely, but I call those alliances mass movements of the working class. When we first took office, when I first took office, and when I brought the bill for $15 an hour, I was constantly asked by corporate media reporters, how do you hope to win this bill? How many votes do you have? And I was very honest with them. I said, today, when we have just launched the movement, there's only one. If the vote took place today, there's only one vote for $15 an hour, and that's mine. In order to be able to win. So yes, on day one, on January 1st, 2014, there was just one vote for $15 an hour, and that was mine. And less than 6 months later, we had won a unanimous vote for $15 an hour and won a phenomenal historic victory. But the way we won that victory, the way we won those 8 other votes, was not by me building alliances with them. You know what would have happened if I had built alliances with them? We would not have won any minimum wage increase, let alone $15 an hour. And so we have to reject this talking point that, oh, you need compromises. I mean, the truth is that living under capitalism is a massive compromise for billions of people. What we have to understand is that anything that is won through class struggle, precisely because the system itself is posed as class war. We didn't choose it. It is so. Capitalism is class war. And the status quo under capitalism is that the vast majority, the overwhelming amount of power and wealth and political clout is in the hands of the billionaires and their parties. And that is why to win anything, the last thing we should be doing is making alliances with them. The people who already have all the power, they have no incentive to make an alliance with us and let us win free healthcare and win 15. Their only interest, when they say alliance and when they say, oh, Kshama doesn't compromise, what they mean, when they say Kshama doesn't compromise, you know what they mean? They mean Kshama doesn't sell out. That is what they mean. And we would be in big trouble if I started making alliances with them, because that would mean I was starting to sell out. And that is why we need this example in the U.S. Congress, because we are not, as Melissa Chaudhary says, we are not there. I am not going there to become one of the 535 or whatever Congress people. I am going to be there as one revolutionary socialist, because we have shown that even with one elected office, as the Seattle Times, not our fan, was forced to admit, that with one elected office, we were able to commandeer the city's political agenda. That is how we did do it, and that is how we are going to do it. And then just lastly, I'll say that in terms of free health, what free healthcare means, and also what is the path. I wanted to come back to that earlier question, what is the path of getting into the general election? Just to be clear, what we mean by free healthcare for all funded by taxing the rich is free healthcare, meaning healthcare that covers every aspect of healthcare. Others talked about it, so I won't repeat it. But it would be funded by taxing the rich, because what we have seen over and over again, even in the rare instances where a Medicare for all type bill was passed, it did happen in the state of Vermont. It's very little known, but there was a bill that was passed, but there was no funding attached to it. And 3 years later, the Democrats said, oh gosh, we don't know how to fund this. Oh my God, we have no ideas. Let's repeal the bill. That is why we are not going to give them any daylight to attack the idea of free healthcare. We're going in, we are saying that this is free healthcare for everybody. I don't care what your citizenship status is. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your healthcare need is. It is going to be met, and it is going to be met from the trillions of dollars that the very wealthy own. It is not a mystery where that money is. That money is with the rich, and we need to get it from the rich. And just last but not least, what lies ahead for us? We are in, roughly already mid-May. The primary election is on the first Tuesday of August. We get this one shot for this election to get into the general election. It's one shot. We want to make the most of it. So this is the moment where we all, and this, when I say all, it means all of us, on an individual level, for us on a daily basis, it will present a question of self-sacrifice. Because if you understand and if you agree that every vote matters and every dollar matters, then if I'm speaking to each one of you, if you don't come out and volunteer with us, if you don't do that shift in that week, we will not be able to win. So I really appeal to everybody, not just in Seattle, but all those of you who are watching over live stream. Let's make the most of this shot in order to be able to win. And I totally agree with what Omar said. Are there guarantees that we can win? Absolutely not. But that's been true about all our campaigns. When we launched our first campaign in 2013, as I said, the media and the Democrats were literally openly laughing at us. They were like, who are these people? And how do they have the temerity to think that they can run for city council? And we ourselves didn't think we were going to win that time. But we did think it was important to run that campaign because we wanted to show an example of what a working class campaign, what working class politics actually looks like. Because for us, it is not about just that one campaign. It is about building the kind of politics that we need to actually change society. So I totally agree with Omar. It is not just about this election campaign. But precisely because it is not just about this election campaign, we have to give this election campaign our very best shot, because we have seen that over and over again on the city council, we gave it our best shot. And you know what happened? They were never able to defeat us in a single election. We won every single election. And the truth is that we launched every single election campaign not having a guarantee that we would win, having everything stacked against us, and being prepared for maybe not winning, and yet giving it our best shot. But giving it our best shot meant that we won every single election, even the fight against the attempted recall on us. Now, does that mean that it is because we won those 4 elections that we will win this election? No, again, in no campaign can there be guarantees. But I just wanted to echo what Omar said. What is guaranteed is that if we don't give this our best shot, we will never be able to change the status quo of war and genocide and the misery and the suffering that tens of millions of American people face. So let's take that commitment to heart, and let's make sure that every single day from now until the first Tuesday of August, we're going to commit ourselves to giving this our best shot for the sake of the working class internationally. Solidarity.
All right, incredible. And that sets us up for our final contribution today is going to be from Dom, who's been a member of Workers Strike Back for almost 3 years now. He fought alongside Kshama's council office for the ceasefire resolution against the genocide in Gaza in November of 2023. And he participated in the movement to defend the $15 minimum wage and renters' rights against attacks by the Seattle City Council Democrats recently. So welcome, Dom, to get us signed up for volunteer activities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Yes, I'll be super brief because I know y'all want to get out of here. But before you head out and talk amongst each other on how we're going to support this campaign, I do really specifically want to make the appeal to volunteer. You're currently being passed out volunteer sheets by folks in the back. Independent grassroots campaign like ours rely on getting hundreds of people engaged in this campaign, and we do not have any minute to waste. So whether you've done one of our canvassing shifts or not, I am hoping every single person here will sign up to come out to the streets with us. If you've never done it before, there is something on that sheet called Volunteer Day, which is an event on Saturday, May 23rd. These are awesome opportunities to be paired with one of our experienced canvassers and get a training before you start. But even if you can't make it to that, any other shift will have people excited to work with a new volunteer on this campaign. And if you have volunteered for the campaign before, filling out the sheet might be a little bit of a formality, but it still really helps for you to be able to. We have volunteer shifts several times a week, every week, and building this consistent habit of getting in and signing up whenever you're here is how we are going to be able to take down Adam Smith and the Democratic Party at large. Thank y'all so much.
All right, thank you, everyone. Let's end with a chant. When I say fight the rich, you say not their wars. Fight the rich.
Not their wars.
Fight the rich.
Not their wars.
Fight the rich.
Not their wars.
All right, let's go out and fight to elect Kshama to Congress.